I learned a lot. I have many notes of things that you have to email me. It was truly a way of thinking, which is a unique ability, and you really are an educator, because more than the information, you empowered us to think about words like convention and tradition and the idea of reclaiming. And I wouldn't normally use the word convention and tradition, and I'm going to borrow them back. We're going to take questions, and so you'll write them down, and I see Bonnie's there, and then you'll just deliver them here. So, Sivan, while the questions are going around, I want to ask you something that's not a new question. It's something that I think we think about as humanistic Jews who are connected to Israel. And I haven't found a satisfying answer, so I want to ask you, why do so many Israelis, they live as Israelis, so their identity is, I speak Hebrew, that's who I am, I don't need to do anything else, I'm not interested, and there's apathy or even resistance, but when it comes to the significant times in their lives, like a bar or bat mitzvah, they go to usually an Orthodox synagogue. I understand the wedding thing because of the legality, but it seems like there still is a draw, as if when I usually don't do anything, but when I'm going to do something, I'm going to do something that's real Judaism. And this mindset is so hard to overcome. So I just wanted to ask you about that. It seems it's here, but it seems particularly ingrained in Israel. Do you want the mic? Do you, this? Sure. Let me just give you this so it doesn't.
I think it's. I believe that there are. I didn't go into this, but thank you for helping me with this. I think that you can define in Israel a few ways to be secular. One way is to be what, I don't know if it's a good term, but it's an anti-religious. The identity of a secular person is defined by what he is not. And he is not religious. Some of them are anti-religious. In other words, they're proactive. It doesn't mean that they're not active. They're proactive. That creates, and that is a very strange situation to be, because many of them are anti-religious, but at the same time they believe that the real Judaism is religious. So that doesn't change that. There are those who have created sort of a void for themselves because they don't see that as being Jewish. They don't see the religious way of being Jewish as relevant for them. On the other hand, because they're so anti, they're stuck with nothing, which is a very big problem. The other way of being Jewish, I don't know how much it is part of the American culture, but you'll tell me, is what we call being in. The fashionable Jewish. Okay, so the fashionable Jewish now would be to do a wedding celebration, bringing in a celebrity that often appears on television, and he will do my wedding. Do you actually know what this person believes in? Have you studied with him? Have you gotten... No, but it's fashionable, and it's fun, because he can hold an audience. I mean, he's really good at that. And you know that hundreds of people will come to the wedding. So that works, because you know that in many Jewish weddings in Israel, you know when the chuppah will be, and it's very important because you don't want to be there. So people arrive after the chuppah. And then there is the other option. The option we talked about many times over this weekend, which is a much more complex message. And it takes a while for people to understand, and it is much harder for people to choose. I think that one of the reasons that many people opt for the religious weddings is because it's out there and it's easy. The good news is that 22.3% of the people in Israel do not get married by the rabbinate. What percentage of them, which will probably be the next question, what percentage of them are people who could get married in the rabbinate? I don't know. There are different ways to count this. There's not one that I rely on, so I can't tell you. The bigger and more important uncounted for in Israel are those people who decide to live together. They do by common law marriage. In other words, they're not listed anywhere. So there's no way to count them. And there are a growing number of people. The 22.3% I was referring to are those people who got married outside of Israel, Cyprus or wherever, and are listed in the Ministry of Interior. The people that are living together as partners are not listed anywhere, so we don't know.
Do you want to field some questions, Anna? Do you want to? Oh, Karen has a question.
There were a couple of questions from the audience just on the basic work of Tumorah that I think would be good for setting up the discussion.
Okay. You get to ask what you want, for sure.
Why don't you do Tumorah first?
Okay.
Okay.
This is like a bonus time for Sivan to talk about her work, and then we'll get to the discussion. One question was, can you define the term Tumorah? Another one was, can you compare the weddings that you do to the Shulamit Aloni wedding work? And the third was, we do adoption. You spoke about conversion. What are the subtleties of that? And the last was, what have been the results of the training given to young people in the military, the education sessions that you and others have been doing? So a little bit more on the world of Tumorah, and then of course Karen.
Tumorah means transformation as well as benefit. And I think it's a positive concept about change and transformation because it gives you both. The difference between what we do and Shulamit Aloni does is that we added the celebratory part to the wedding. What Shulamit Aloni does and did, and sometimes still does, and by the way, by now there are many more attorneys who do that. They do the legal issues of creating a partnership, very much like you would create a partnership of a company. This is a partnership of two people, but basically it's the legal-wise, you say that, it's basically the same thing. We said we want people to celebrate their Judaism, not only make sure that the legal part of it is taken care of. And maybe that's how I can explain the difference. I much rather use the term adoption. The reason we're using giyur, we're not using conversion because we're not doing it in English, is because we want to be included as a viable option in the legal system in Israel. So we must use the term giyur. Adoption will mean nothing to no one. So we are reclaiming it, just like we reclaim the Mishkan, or the Knesset, or the Beit Knesset, or the Rabbi, and we're giving it a different meaning. The IDF. I've been working with the IDF now for a few years, I'll just remind those of you who don't know, what happened was that after I was ordained as a rabbi, suddenly pluralism and panels in Israel they realized there was an empty chair. Up to the time I was ordained, you would have the pluralistic panels with a Reform and a Conservative and an Orthodox and sometimes an ultra-Orthodox rabbi. Can you imagine the situation in Israel? You don't have anybody secular up there? That's not part of Jewish pluralism? It wasn't. I had to come to America, to Sherwin-Williams, to be ordained as a rabbi, to be included in panels in Israel about pluralistic Judaism. We're strange people. About once a month, I go to an officer's course. This is part of the educational system in the Army. when you become to any rank, you need to go through some educational forums, and these are officers who are already on the third rank of being officers, and they want to go into a higher rank of officer. And in the beginning, I used to come to these panels, and then they decided that they'll give me my own time with the group. So now I finally have my own time with the group. And they've added that after they go through this course and they come back 6 months later, then I take them for a tour of the Israeli Museum, because my Beit Knesset is the Israeli Museum. That is part of the convention of what good culture is in Israel, and because we have to be mainstream, my celebrations are at the Israeli Museum, so have our conventions been.
First of all, you are brilliant, and I want to study with you.
To hear it from you is a real compliment. Thank you.
So there are hundreds of thousands of Russian Jews in Israel who've been there since the fall of the Soviet Union who can't get married. And for various reasons, I'm wondering if you can explain why they can't get married, and whether and how you work with those folks who are sort of in that limbo position with the state.
These are the 300,000 people that I mentioned before that are considered religiousless. And in other words, what happened in Israel, that they were able to come to Israel because of the law of return, which law of return says that if you have anybody, basically anybody in the genealogy is Jewish, basically you can come to Israel. But that, as you know, doesn't work with halakha. So, and because the marriages in Israel are only religious, then these people cannot get married. They could, by the way, if they would convert to Christianity or become Muslim, they could, but they don't want to. I don't blame them. And so we're stuck. And this is terrible. And I don't know what is worse. The situation in Israel right now, when I left, I don't know what's going on, is the fact that there are a couple of, there's really one suggestion that is out there on the table right now, which will be called Brit Zugiyut, which is a covenant of couples.
Couplehood.
And the idea is that they will have a legal standing because they will sign this treaty or covenant, and therefore the state really enables them to be covenantally coupled. In other words, this is really bad because it does say you are different, you cannot get married in Israel. But because of the coalition and because of the political situation in Israel, I think we lost. We have our own coalition, and Tmura has been very active and very much part of any coalition out there. I believe in partnerships. We are partners with the Reform and the Conservative and the Reconstructionist. We sit on many panels together and many organizations together. We are embraced by them, and so that's not been the issue. But I believe we have lost that battle. I'd be very happy to find out on Tuesday. I'll be happy to celebrate both Greg's book and the fact that this didn't go through, but I may end up just with one celebration.
Sivan, when you do a wedding, what are the legal ramifications later or for the couple? For example, if you do a wedding, I'm going to give you an example of myself. I was married by an ultra-Orthodox rabbi in Israel, and then Rabbi wanted a ceremony here. So I know firsthand the process of being a bride in Israel and going to the county clerk, which is an Ashkenazic and a Sephardic rabbi, because they can't agree who's in charge. They have one of each. And then we took the certificate to the embassy and applied for Isaac to come here. could I do, that was 14 years ago, could I do something similar? If you had married us, or let's say it's today, you married me, could I take the certificate, which was a ketubah, which is the marriage license in Israel, that sold me for 200 zuzim, which I've spoken to my friends who are Oakland County judges, and they reassure me it'll be worth about 2.5 million in case of a divorce, because you have compounding interest from biblical times every 7 years. What could I have done that? I mean, that's always kind of the nagging question for me is, so I go to the American Embassy and I say, well, I'm a cultural Jew, I believe in this represents, I do all the language. Will they take it? No.
I did one interfaith marriage with an Orthodox rabbi.
What?
The interfaith was me
Legitimate.
with my faith and the Orthodox rabbi with his faith. That was an interesting process. But I was able to do that. This was a story of a couple that heard one of my lectures and came at the end of the lecture and said, we really would like you to do the wedding for us. And I met them, and as I do when we study together before the wedding, I asked them, what do you want? And then I got a list of no's. I don't want this, and I don't want this, and I don't want the tuba, I don't want this, and I don't want this. And then I said, well, have you ever read it? Do you know what it says? Do you know what traditional wedding is all about? Do you know what humanist wedding is all about? Let's see what the options, let's study. So we started studying, and they're very good students, and we had a lot of fun. When we finished studying, I did what I always do. I asked the couple, who are you inviting? Because it's very important for me to do anything I can to try not to offend, to include. It's a very difficult task to keep your integrity and at the same time try to include all the people that are there at the wedding. So I asked them, and I saw that the woman had tears in her eyes. And I coached her to tell me what was wrong. And she said, well, my mother won't come. And I said, why wouldn't she come? And she said, well, A, you're a woman. B, you have to be an Orthodox rabbi, because if not, you don't count legally, but also in her tradition. And C, she doesn't want to be embarrassed in front of the guests. So I said, listen, about A, I'm not going to change it. But neither about the other things as well. So I said to her, but listen, I believe that cultural Judaism is about partnerships. Let's figure out if we can do that. So she said, no Orthodox rabbi will do that, because rabbis have their big ego. I said, wait a minute, I'm a rabbi too, So I said, it's all about people. Let's try, let's look. And we did. And the question was that we had to figure out, both he and I, what are our limitations? What won't we do? And we figured it out. And the other thing was that I started to work with the mother. I figured out that the mother thinks of herself as a traditional Jew, and I was very happy to hear that she's a Bible teacher. Well, we opened the Song of Songs, and by the time we had the wedding, the mother, both brothers, sang songs from the Song of Songs. She gave a drasha, she preached about the Song of Songs, and we had a wonderful wedding with 60 people in the backyard of the mother's home. When I left, when I was about to leave, I was approached by the couple. And they said to me, we want you to come on Saturday night, which was 2 days later. I said, why? She said, because that will be the real celebration. I said, what do you mean? This was like a rehearsal? And they said, yes, by the way, this happens a lot in Israel. Yes. Okay, I come. I enter one of this Israeli wedding spaces, which is about 400 to 500 people. I mean, there's no wedding which is less than that. And I see a big screen, and everybody's sitting together, and it's beautiful gardens, people sitting together, and this couple take the mic. They stand in front of people. Now you have to envision them. Both of them are very shy people. And they stand in front of this audience, which they really didn't mean to do. And they told the story of our wedding, how we worked on it and what did we actually do, and that the reason that all you people, they said to them, weren't invited is because we were afraid to offend you, and we didn't know if it would be Jewish enough. That's what they said. But now that you're all here, and we're so proud of our wedding, we want to show you the chuppah. And they screamed it on the big screen.
I just wanted to get back to the answer, Sivan, because it's such a major hurdle for us. The answer that you gave to my question was no, that I could not take that ceremony to the embassy. Yeah. That's a major hurdle. Yeah. Okay.
I wanted to give you another peek into why I feel that I cannot live without the Bible, or I certainly cannot celebrate without the Bible. I cannot remember without the Bible. And when I was here in the summer, I was fortunate to study together with the people that are being trained here for leaders in our movement. And one of the issues that we studied was the story of the binding of Isaac. Mistitled The Sacrifice of Isaac. He wasn't eventually. According to the Bible, by the way. There are stories in the Talmud which she was. And this is a story that, as you probably know, traditionally is retold during the high holidays. And I think it should be retold, certainly in Israel. It was reclaimed many years ago by Israeli culture, song, poems, literature. It is so much a part of our art that it's we really don't have time to explain it. But I want to take you to a slightly different place. Listen to this. While the annual rally commemorating the 12th anniversary of the assassination of the former Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was going, another ceremony was being conducted in prison. The murderer of Yitzhak Rabin had a ceremony for his newborn son. The name of the ceremony is Brit Yitzhak. In the words of Yuval Rabin, Yitzhak Rabin's son. This ceremony originates in the tradition of studying the Torah on the night preceding a circumcision ceremony. The purpose of the studying is to protect the newborn and not to leave him defenseless. This ceremony is known as Brit Yitzhak, or Covenant of Isaac. Brit Yitzhak is a tradition based on God's promise to Abraham following the drama of the binding of Isaac. As it is said, by myself have I sworn, said the Lord, because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thine only son. But in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed, as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore. More than 150,000 people joined the annual event held in Rabin Square, which is in November every year. This took place where the former Prime Minister was gunned down. There was a large peace demonstration on November 4, 1995. A Jew, in my opinion, says Yuval Rabin, is a moral person who obeys the law, a member of our people that gave humanity the universal code of ethics, the Ten Commandments. Yuval Rabin is a part of the board of this educational initiative I was telling you about. He became a friend to humanistic secular education. He's very adamant about it. And the story of the binding of Isaac is so much part of our reality that it is inconceivable to think of the high holidays without it. But at the same token, I want to tell you that for me, Yom Kippur is a joyous event. Every time I ask people, describe to me what Yom Kippur means. They say, well, we fast. People go to synagogue. I say, do you fast? And sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. They say, well, go on, tell me what else do you do on Yom Kippur? I said, well, that's pretty much Yom Kippur. And I said to them, I don't understand you. Go out to the street in Yom Kippur. Is that what you see? Go out to the street on Yom Kippur in Israel. People are dressed in white. They ride the bikes. They go on rollerblades. There are no cars. It's a fun day. This is a celebration. This is a few days before Yom Kippur. Israel sells more bikes than it does all the year. Yeah. It rents more videos than any other day of the year. Somebody's watching these videos. Somebody's riding these bikes. You have to feel the celebration. But you know what? This is part of tradition. There were no better days for the Jewish people than the 15th of Av and Yom Kippurim, Mishnah, Ta'anit. This is something which is part of our tradition. This was a day in which the women lended each other white clothes. They went out to the vineyards and danced. They chose partners. They chose men they wanted to live with for the rest of their lives. That was the celebration of Yom Kippur. And that's part of our message in Israel. Look at the reality. Don't think the reality. See what's going on. That's what cultural Judaism about. That is the array of options, and it is up to us to choose from it. Thank you very much.
I'm not going to say very much. I just wanted to point out an interesting parallel that I'm hearing between what's happening in Israel and what we're going through in this country as well. This idea of brit zugiyut, really the parallel in our experience is what's called a civil union for gay and lesbian couples, where they would acquire some legal rights, but it wouldn't be marriage. Now the challenge in this country is that there's some discussion even within the LGBT community about whether they themselves want the rights, absolutely, reasonable and, as you say, basic human rights, but the title marriage becomes problematic. But in Israel, my feeling is that people want to be married. They want that word. It's very important to them. And the fact that they don't have that basic civil right is a real challenge. You know, as I was hearing you talk about the Bible, I was channeling a colloquium from 12 years ago, where your father and Sherwin got into a long discussion on the poetic truth of the Bible.
Right.
And
That was a big one.
is
This
the-
time of day,
is the,
Sunday
Is
morning.
the Bible something that is wonderful and powerful, or is it something that's objectionable? I mean, no, they wipe out everybody, the babies and the animals. And I was saying to myself, do not say what they said. Because I didn't agree with it. In fact, I liked what Yaakov had to say in that discussion much more. But what I do find is that we occasionally fall into the trap of what you can call Torahatry, where we say it's a marvelous document. We worship the Torah in some ways, or the Bible as a whole. But we have to acknowledge that it is a human document and not perfect. It's powerful. It is important, but not all fantastic. And that's the balancing act. You're absolutely right. You need it for Jewish literacy. As I said, to get the jokes. You have to know the sources. But that doesn't mean we have to say that it's always wonderful for it to be important. And I think that we don't disagree on this at all. In fact, it was odd that I felt like I was channeling you a couple of months ago because I found a passage in the Talmud that said, do not speak once in the heart and once in the mouth. In other words, it's a statement of integrity. And that is our tradition. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back from the break. But the irony is to say that we are traditional by making change. And we are traditional by re-articulating what we believe. That is itself a break with tradition, but at the same time, we shouldn't be afraid to do it, because we're right.
I just want to say something before the break. Doesn't matter. Whatever. Whichever you think is right. Okay.
Just two comments that I owe myself. One is that people like to be normal. We're back to the beginning of my speech, and they want to be married like everybody else, and they want to be part of the convention. The other thing is that in addition to what you said, we need to contextualize whatever we do, and that's true also about the Bible. The last thing I wanted to say is a word about integrity. We keep using the word identity, and it bothers me all the time. What is identical to what? What's the identity issue? How do you create identity? What does that mean? And I think that Sherman solved the puzzle. I think that's the idea of integrity. When you are able when you aspire to an identity between your aspirations and beliefs and values to what you say and what you do. If you're able to get to that, to almost identical, that's your identity. Thank you.